So in this unit, we're practicing reading and understanding critical articles. You've taken a look at Derailment of a Streetcar Named Desire. You know the play already, you've seen the film, or at least relevant bits of the film to help you understand what's being talked about in this article. You've read the Motion Picture Code of 1930, or at least skimmed that and read the introduction preamble to the Motion Picture Code of 1930. So you have a sense of some of the elements that are significant to this discussion of Streetcar Named Desire. So let's just lay out here what we have. So we have a primary text, Streetcar Named Desire, and then this is a critical article that's going to apply some theoretical ideas to the analysis of Streetcar. How do we evaluate the argument that's presented in this text? Well, one thing is to go through and make sure we understand all the meaning and we understand the structure. And once we get those basics under our belts, then we can start thinking about the strengths and weaknesses of this article. One of the key things this article starts with the reception of the film Streetcar Named Desire. Talks about how it was received incredibly well, everybody loved it, but this writer suggests that the film, in fact, was not as faithful to the play as it at first seems. And the reason for that, Ellen Dowling argues, is that the Motion Picture Code of 1930, that was still in effect at the time that this film came out, mandated censorship of some key elements of the play. Then she goes through and uses close reading to analyze the stage play and some parts of the screenplay to show differences between the two, and then argue from that evidence from the primary text what the significant effect of those changes are. So just for example, when she's talking about the use of vulgar language on 235, and she gives a whole bunch of specific quotations that show the differences between the play and the screenplay, but then she analyzes that and explains how these differences affect the characters of Blanche and of Stanley, whitewashing Blanche, as she argues, and making Stanley more a villain. So that's part of the argument. And again, this is where the evaluative piece could come in. This is a claim she's making. She's supporting it with the text, and then and then including her own analysis. So that could be a piece where you as a reader decide whether that is persuasive or not, and that's the evaluation of effectiveness. She has a few other arguments there too, as she talks about not just language, but she talks about the omitting the reference to homosexuality of Blanche's husband, and talks about how that has an effect on the character. She also talks in detail about the changes to the ending. So you can look at each one of her subpoints and you can evaluate each one of them for how strong, how effective they are. You can rank them in terms of which ones are stronger than the others. I personally find the one where she talks about the ending and the changes made to the ending to be her strongest point. And it makes sense structurally that she ends with that one, because it is a really strong point that she's making. And then after doing that analysis and looking at each of those classes of changes and talking about why they're important, she comes back to her main idea and restates and reinforces that claim that the film, in fact, is not a faithful representation of the play. That's just sort of a quick overview, and that's what you want to do when you're working on an article. It is very possible that you won't understand every single word or every single sentence. Sometimes critics will be looking at maybe two texts, and one of them is one you're not interested in, or they're just bringing in some other sources that aren't necessarily needed for you and for your analysis. It's okay if you don't understand every single thing. The key component of evaluating these critical articles is to see if you can follow that main argument that they're making. And if that main argument is useful, even if you don't understand every single bit, you still can find that a useful source that you can include in your own, as a secondary support in your own analysis. When you encounter a critical text, you want to make sure you can identify the thesis or the main idea. You want to make sure you understand the organization of the argument, and that you can talk about those key big picture subpoints, right? The main elements of that argument that are being discussed. And then if you need to, that should enable you to go back and target specific parts of that article that may be useful as support in your own argument that you are making.